Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to talk about Venom the Last Dance, or basically Spawn 1997. If you have not gone on and seen Spawn 1997, you need to watch this film. I get it that maybe the graphics aren't that good, or maybe it's just so action packed that there's not enough story for you to taste your flavor. But by golly, if you are to even think about seeing this film, you need to see Spawn 1997 and really need to compare both films because, man, there is a real fun thromp for you to go on and do so. So, speaking of comparisons, Venom the Last Dance really has to go on and be compared to Iron Man 3 in a lot of ways, I feel. Uh, you also would have me want to compare this to Man of Steel, where supposedly Clark Kent Superman has this whole one thing that is to be the saving grace of Krypton, where in a lot of ways Eddie Brock has the exact same thing. And then we also go on to have me want to compare this to the very first Hulk movie, where we go on, we have Hulk who's mostly just kind of jumping around and facing off against Sam Elliott with all of these kind of helicopters and action scenes at some points. And eventually he also goes off and faces like poodles and dogs and stuff. And then eventually he finally does have a actual absorbing man final boss character that he faces off against, which within this movie doesn't quite get there clearly. But here is also the thing that I have to go on and state about this film. There is going to be a lot of things that specifically in the trailers are probably going to clickbait you into this film. Like, of course, realizing, like, oh my god, the same actor who plays Dr. Connors from the Amazing Spider-Man movies is in this film. What is he doing? Yeah, the guy who is to be what looks like Dr. Connors from Amazing Spider, that's just the same actor being involved in this movie, but he's not being Dr. Connors. He's just going on and being just some guy with a family named Marty. And really, he doesn't add really anything to this film beyond him just spouting alien attack, alien invasion, aliens suck. And really, that is the most cavemanish, barbarian thing you can go on and say in this entire film. That sounds just so dumb. But then again, also, when you look at it, there's several times where when people are put into like earthly crises where a big, huge, massive typhoonish wave is going to crush them or kill them, they're just looking at it and going, ah! So really, like, that's like the same thing to me in my brain noggin of like alien invasion, alien attack, aliens suck. Like, I'm just thinking that, like, God, how stupid is that dialogue? But then again, when you're having that same kind of crisis in front of people, they're just like, ah! Yeah, same thing. And they just they're just stoned and they just can't move. So I guess I have to just forgive this movie even for that stupid dialogue. But then also we have the guy who played Mordo in the Doctor Strange movies. Is he playing Mordo in this film? No, he's playing a guy named Strickland. And Strickland is just basically the exact same replica of Sam Elliott from the Hulk movie, where he's just this military guy that's like, I'm mad at things, but what the heck can I do? A lick of nothing, because he's just a military guy that's just not in this movie, I think, clearly enough to be any real true threat of this film, or have to have me give a rip about him, as well as a number of other things that are kind of going on in this film. Then we have the big bad, Null. Clearly the guy that is going to be the next Thanos, but really you would have to actually have seen him in a film to be able to make that real true assessment, which is kind of telling you how much screen time Null actually have in this film, which is just mere seconds. Again, the King in Black, the guy that's been smothering your comic books lately, is in mere seconds in this film, and he should have been the big bad final boss, murderer of Venom, Eddie Brock, whichever, within this film. And really, he is just a guy that is a dog with a chain, and eventually he is to try and state by the end credit scenes of the film that he's coming, and we've taken a whole entire film to build up that he's coming, but what does that equate to anything diddly squat worth of nothing to a finale film that tries to build on stuff where I'm like, okay, I don't think that this is ever going to go anywhere, because how could it, because this is the finale film, and hoping to have me just have Venom to just be shoved into all the Spider-Man movies because that's all anyone is going to care about. Also, we have to realize that there is a Spider-Man No Way Home end credit scene that probably negates everything that is possibly going on here within this movie. And to even go on and have Strickland go on and take a sample of a part of a symbiote and say like, hey, like we really have to go on and contain every bit of this because like we don't want any of it getting out. And also, like, that reminds me of the Spider-Man No Way Home scene where obviously there is some remnants or some separation of the Venom symbiote within No Way Home. So, again, what are we really trying to do in this movie that, like, will eventually be really 100% pointless later? As well as also having us trying to figure out how Venom whatsoever is going to get tied into other Marvel films, or how will they have this Venom character get fused within the actual MCU. I'm hoping happening soon, because I call Tom Holland's Spider-Man the actual MCU, and Tom Hardy's Venom is just a thing that exists, as well as also other things that are just not quite that good as far as what they do with Spider-Man Sony stuff. So, now that I've gotten that all out of the way, we do have a lot of symbiotes in this movie. We have Toxins, Agony, Scream, Barely. We seemingly there's Lashin or Lashus, or I have the actual name of it. I like that one just kind of escapes me for the actual name of that character because I don't know it as well as other symbiotes. And so we go on and we have all these symbiotes that are to be in this film, but again, like a lot of those symbiotes are actually just throwaways, and even to be the one symbiote that we are to supposedly see the most in this film that is warning us that Null is coming. Again, like they just kind of throw away that character at some point. So really, for everything that they do in this movie is a massive throwaway, because really it doesn't accomplish enough in this movie besides a song and dance somewhere. And really, like, it just does not go on and make me think that they're going to do anything with this later on. And also, why would they? Because really, we should probably be forgetting that any of these Sony Spider-Man things exist, because really they were not good anyways. Beyond a lot of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies that it seems everyone liked, and I am just kind of I'm just kind of meh about. I'm just kind of 50-50 about. With the exclusion, of course, of No Way Home, because of course that kind of ties into all of the other Spider-Man movies, and that is the only thing I care about. So, this is the most skippable Marvel film. This is probably hands down probably the worst Marvel film that I've ever seen, and I've seen Madam Web. I've seen the Marvels. I've seen the X-Men films, the Apocalypses, and all that garbage. And I've seen Ghost Rider 2, Spirit of Vengeance, and man, is that movie good now after watching this. And to go on and probably tell me any Marvel movie that has ever existed and say that it's to be a worse off movie than this, I would just beg to differ. I really would. This movie just makes me think that, man, I'm sure a lot of these actors got paid really well to do this film, but God, did any of them ever think that, man, we should probably be putting a better movie out than this? I guess not. Everybody was just happy to get paid that day. That's the kind of upsetting part of me to just be like, how is it that none of these people thought that they weren't putting a nothing but good movie out at this point of God? That's what just frustrates me. How they can just allow these films to just kind of go out and have no care about them and just be like, well, I got paid. Did you? Yeah, great. That's how I feel. And also, if you watch the Tom Hardy uh, video on YouTube where he's buying sneakers, he's like, well, yeah, like I figured a way for Sony to give me all of these sneakers, and while I was doing the Venom movie, and I was like, yeah, all right, like so, like again, like does Tom Hardy care about these films, or like does he just want stuff from them? I don't know. Um, but either way, like I love Tom Hardy. I like a lot of his films, and this just isn't one of them. And so, with that said, where can you go on? And if I haven't mentioned already, where can you go on and see this horrible film? You can go on a app called Darren Fact Zeliphonic, Zlivonic. You can see this movie for absolutely free, so you won't have to go on and see it in a theater and have to spend money, or also you won't have to go on and try to figure out what the heck app this is going to eventually be on later, because it probably won't be on Disney Plus. It'll probably be on Stars or Max or some other app that you would dare in fact probably not have a subscription for. Maybe it'll be on Hulu or Tubi or some just third world app that Darren Feck would be like, how is it on that app? How did it get on Crackle or some other thing? Because really, I'm sure it's just going to get shoved on some app somewhere, and people are going to forget about it. So with that said, in my head, check out Zeliphonic. You can see this movie for absolutely free right now. You can avoid having to get spoiled about it hugely when I'm going to go on and talk about every bit about this for whatever I can remember within my brain from after seeing this after a day. And also just realizing that I'm going to heavily just cliff note this movie instead of focusing on every scene for scene movie, because I don't want to take 2 hours anymore doing a review. And hence why I'm going to go on and talk a little about personal before I'm going to get into all the spoilers of why I've been absent on the channel. So, I have been absent on this channel simply because I have been working out. I have been lifting weights. I have been trying to also try and lose weight, but again, it has become very difficult. Logically, when I go on and I work out for numerous hours, I will probably lose 1 whole pound. And so, really, I'm just like, wow, like I have to lose 1 whole pound just to eat a meal the next day and gain back that pound. So, like, what am I really doing as far as progress is really uh, progressing as far as my weight loss is concerned? But then also, I have gone on to achieve deadlifting 390 pounds the second this recording, and hopefully I will go on and days further, hopefully be able to uh, deadlift more pounds. And so, really, I have been very focusing on that, trying to make progress and also trying to become a hopefully much more healthier self. But then again, we also have Thanksgiving coming up and a number of things. So more than likely, any of that I try to even get to now is probably going to get ruined by all that. But logically, I am not a uh, person that uh, eats well over a normal allotment of food either. So normally I would probably eat one whole meal a day, and that's about it. So with that said, I have also just been fairly frustrated and fairly just like, man, I've been doing this for so long now. Like, it's coming down to like, okay, like, what more can I do? What more can I try to put out? What more can I avoid uh, with content that I'm going to find boring or just like reviewing it or watching it just for the sake of just like, okay, I guess I have to just watch Forrest Gump. Maybe that'll make views, right? But if anything, like that movie is just not exciting to me. The movie is boring to me. The movie is just like uh, a movie that I can find entertaining, but also again, uh, like I'm gonna turn around and watch that movie, and who knows what it's gonna do. That is where I'm kind of coming with everything that I'm doing. Like, is really new releases gonna be at any point anything that anybody's gonna really gonna want to watch the review for? As well as also, yeah, I will admit that I've made a lot of mistakes within the stuff that I've chosen, within also the stuff that I've decided to put at certain lengths on this channel. Obviously, with 2 hour reviews, no one's gonna watch that. As well as also, no one's going to care about me talking about my personal life, so who cares? Uh, I've also almost come to some conclusions of even putting out video game content on here, but even that won't be the most crispiest, crackliest, brand spanking new video games that you've ever seen in your life on this channel either. As well as also, every single one of those videos may just be me reacting to whatever I did on whatever video game, because of course, the technology which I have, as well as also just the equipment eventually that I'm really running out of, will eventually at some point hopefully be it is what it is. So with that said, I want to say that I'm going to continue to do videos at some point. But then again, I don't want to promise that they're going to be released every other day or every 2 days or whatever, because I can go on and promise to the heavens that like, okay, I have this schedule of this or whatever. But if you've ever seen any number of videos on this channel, I never follow that, and I've fallen through on a lot of things that I've either said that I was doing, promised I was doing, or whatever, because I would always second guess everything that I'm doing, as well as second guessing everything that I've ever did on this channel, as well as also being tempted to just delete stuff just because it's like, well, that's never going to do anything on this channel. Why is it even there? As well as also me talking right now. So, with that said, let's go on and let's get into the full deep distraction of me talking about this film and kind of picking through a lot of it, because really I'm going to try as much as possible to make these videos a lot shorter, because everybody loves that, right? It doesn't matter that you could really just go on and really like how a person talks or compares or whatever. You just want a shorter video. So with that said, I'm going to go on and give you a double 5 time territory, because it is spoiler time. And of course, I'm going to go on and give you spoiler time. Spoiler time is about that time I'm going to spoil this movie. I'm going to pause this video here and get out a little bit of cast list and character list, because there's some certain symbiotes that I'm from comic books not quite familiar with as far as names is concerned. And also, really also, uh, no, Null is a character that, yeah, like, it's been smothering comic books lately, but like, I never fully like I watched a lot of Comics Explained stuff about Null, but then again, a lot of that stuff just kind of went like one ear and out the other, because I'm like, okay, like, he's really awesome and powerful and whatever, but I'm not really seeing anything like concretely that like determines how like really like hugely powerful this guy is. Like when you would go on and you would have guys like Thanos. Thanos would come in and he would just be decking freaking Hulk, and he would be like taking on Thor, and he'd be like, dude, you're gonna freaking die. And instead he goes on and kills Loki instead. Like that showcases real power there. Like that he can just kind of throw away all of these characters like it's nobody's business. And like for Null, like I'm just not really seeing like the the big impressive moment of Null that I can just go on and be like, oh my god, yeah, like this guy is like this guy is the most powerful being in whatever. Because I'm like, dude, I've already seen so many of these guys kind of come and go, like the Galactuses and Thanoses and Howard the Duck for some of you girls out there. And so on and so forth. Like I've seen so many of these characters say that they're uberly awesomely powerful and whatever, but eventually like somebody's just gonna put the boots to them anyways. So and also like we don't really see Null enough in this film to really determine freaking anything. So with that said, let's pause here and let's get out my stuff. Lasher. Lasher is the name. I know everybody's going to give me crap about it, but I said it correctly somewhere in this video. So, regardless, I'm sure everybody's going to give me crap about it. I hope you would go on and just spend 40 some odd comments and just berate me about how I just said this name incorrectly, because I would love to just have the comments anyways. Just like that other video that I did a long time ago where I said a name incorrectly and 70 people had to like say in the name consistently how it was said and spelled and whatever. And I'm like, like I would just have loved to have said at that point, like, man, I just did that on purpose. I just did that on purpose. I wanted people to correct me. I wanted a comment on the video. Like I desperately needed it anyways. So with that said, let's go on and let's talk about this film. So the beginning of Venom the Last Dance is to really just set up the end credit scene that was to have happened in Spider-Man No Way Home, where we have Eddie Brock, who is to seemingly appear in the same world as Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and is to be fully aware about there being a purple alien in existence who is to be named Thanos, who is to have loved stones. And Eddie Brock is to contradict that and say, like, dude, I know aliens, and aliens don't love stones. So Eddie Brock, who is to go on and have a little sliver of Venom left on to this world, which is immediately to be the negating thing of like, okay, like, well, is that how Tom Holland becomes the black suited Spider-Man? Is that how Tom Holland is eventually going to go on and give Eddie back Venom, so that way everything that happens in this movie just kind of is to be a waste of time anyways? Because we again have Strickland who goes to that same bar and takes the sample. So it again negates and ruins everything. To just say, like, man, we just have Venom samples just everywhere, and like, how is Eddie going to not have Venom still like be connected to him in a fashion or way or whatever? So but anyways, we have Eddie Brock, and he is at this bar going on and talking to this barman about how this guy had been ruined by his family who had gotten taken, but really this is all after Endgame, so why is all of this conversation even happening? So Eddie Brock is to go on and be looking at the television, and he is to somehow be connected to the acts of Let There Be Carnage, and how Detective Mulligan had seemingly been killed during the actions of that event, which logically Detective Mulligan had gone on to just be connected to a symbiote, which had kind of not killed him, and is to actually have him be a presence in this film, which it is what it is. And he ends up being Toxin, and Toxin ends up just being a character that is to just eventually tell us how intimidating Null is, and then eventually disappears. And I'll bring that up when I talk more about the film. So Eddie's going on watching the telly, and he's realizing that he's a wanted man. So he's like, "Well, hey man, like we got to get out of here. Like we got to find somebody that is to go on and help us just like escape, run out of here, find a place to disappear." So Eddie decides that he's going to go on and make his way out of this bar to then find food for Venom for the road. And we have Strickland and his military militia men, mercenary, whatever's, make their way to this bar and is to again find the sample of one of the symbiote pieces, and is to go on to be talking to the barman and being like, okay, well, like, if anything, we need to just kind of grab this guy and like have him like be interrogated and tell us his whole story. So Strickland, it seems, is on the hunt for Eddie Brock, Venom, and all the while also needing to set up what was Area 55, needing to get transferred over to Area 51, because it seems has gone to be such a tourist attraction, is to now have to be having every single thing needed to be moved over to Area 55, which basically ends up getting negated anyways because we have a whole family that can go on and figure out where Area 55 is. And again, like, we have like this whole portion of story of this whole kind of switchover, but like it does nothing anyways. So we have Eddie Brock that makes his way onto this shelter of dogs that are probably, who knows, doing uh, uh, COCK fights, and uh, and so we have these dogs, and Eddie and Venom are looking at him, and Venom's like, "Well, hey, I'm not gonna go on, and I'm not gonna fight against dogs. Like, I'm not that kind of alien." And we have Eddie that's like, "Hey man, like don't bother. They're all in the cages. It's fine." So instead, we come to find that there is a number of gringos that make their. That sounded very racist. We have a number of people, because they're all Spanish. It's true. And so we have a number of guys that are to make their way to Eddie Brock's face. And of course, like, if we had gone on to see the very first Venom movie, where we had the guy who is robbing the supermarket, or the supermarket, the market little place that was owned by Mrs. Chen, and Eddie comes to the evade as Venom and is telling him like, "Well, hey, I'm gonna make you run away and pee in your pants and this and that, and because we are Venom." And we kind of have the exact same thing done here, but in this case, we're trying to even do more comedy with the Venom. It's like, "We are Venom," and Eddie's like, we are Venom," and like, we are Venom. Like, and Eddie's just like, "Dude, we need to work on that." So Eddie goes on and he finds this group of burly men, and he goes and uses his symbiote to just latch onto every single one of them, and then just chomps on all their heads and is to walk off. So again, I'm assuming Strickland is just figuring out and finding where Venom is during the whole entire time. And then so we set up this character, Dr. Payne, who eventually ends up having this weird, goofy nightmare where we have her brother going on and telling her, like, "Well, hey," he has this whole weird rhyme of this goofy thing where he's like, "Well, hey, like, uh, uh, something about going indoors. Uh, like, if the weather is poor, stay indoors," or something like that. because it all has some a tying or attachment to lightning, as if uh, Dr. Payne has probably gotten like struck by lightning a number of times in her life, or is to possibly have some power herself that is to do with lightning, and then eventually has to have a symbiote also later on in the movie. But again, like I don't understand any of that story. Like I would have to go on and need to at some point find a comics explained video that explains all these symbiotes perfectly to me, because I don't know Agony all that well. As well as also who cares about Agony, because really like her and a billion other symbiotes are kind of like the only one that I really cared about was like Maniac, and that was about it. All the other symbiotes are just like I don't care about their backstory. They're not really all that clever or important. Beyond Carnage, who cares? They're not good enough in my eyes. They might be interesting. They might be visually creative, but who cares about them logically? Uh, so we have Doctor Payne that is going on making her way to Area 51 that is just going to be switched over to Area 55, and that Area 51 is to just be nuked and not nuked, but like is to just be uh, uh, dynamited and taken down and whatever. So logically, no one deems it worthy to still explore or uh, find things about it within the areas of 51s. So, while Dr. Payne is going on and doing so, Strickland is kind of taking her on the way of of getting to Area 55, and that of course is where they both go on to meet up with Detective Mulligan, who is no longer Detective Mulligan. He is just Toxin. We have him go on and put his arm against the glass, and there's to be the kind of the symbiote that is all teal, and he is to be pressing against uh, the glass, talking to these people. And it seems that this symbiote is to be, for the most part, non-threatening. Like I'm sure this symbiote could figure out some way to get the heck out of there, but it is not going on and planning on doing so because he realizes that the world is going to end anyways, and he's going on and telling Dr. Payne and Strickland and Christmas and because yeah, there's seriously a girl named Christmas in this movie. Eventually, she goes on and becomes a symbiote, and huzzah for her for being able to have to do all this stuff in this film later on, where it seems that she's kind of doing a lot of action towards the later half in this film. The Lasher, venomous character or symbiotic character. So we go on and we have Toxin, who is going on in a very deep voice, going on and telling us that darkness is rising and darkness is coming, and that it's going to lead to the end of the world. And I'm like, okay, like I've heard any number of freaking people make the same freaking claim at this point. Like it's kind of like Blade and Blade Trinity, where he's like, dude, I've heard everybody saying that their name was Dracula at some point, like, and everybody tasted the end of my sword. So what difference is no? But then again, Null doesn't even want to get his hands dirty, because Null goes on and he is at the planet of the symbiotes. Because if you do not know, because Guardians of the Galaxy at some points covers this, when Venom and Guardians of the Galaxy are both together in comic books, they showcase that there is a whole planet of symbiotes. This comic book is actually really cool, and the only real viable Marvel comic book of Guardians of the Galaxy that I would actually like to have obtained and read, because really, it's the only actually interesting Guardians of the Galaxy book ever. Because all the rest of them, I think, in my mind, freaking suck. But every once in a while, I'll get like a Guardians of the Galaxy book that I'm just like, okay, whatever. Like, I don't want to read this. Because none of the like, I would know Gamora and Rocket via the Nova books when they rebooted Nova. But again, I would not read a Guardians of the Galaxy book. they're just not good. So we go on and we come to find that Null is letting loose the xenophages, not the xenomorphs, because if you've seen the Sigourney Weaver Alien movie, you'd be like, oh my god, xenomorphs? It's not the same thing. And also, I might be confusing you by even saying xenomorphs and xenophages here, because really it sounds like the same freaking thing. It looks like the same freaking thing. And it also, that is be an irksome thing about me. Just like, why not just have like the Sigourney Weaver Ripley crossover with Venom? Because that would actually have been a cool movie instead of giving us this. So, again, we have Null, who's unleashing the dogs of war with the xenophages, because really he just sends one xenophage out, and that one xenophage, for every time he's to kind of get kind of taken down or whatever, he just reforms and just keeps on going after Venom, after Eddie Brock. Even though logically, every time that the xenophage is to see Eddie Brock and not Venom, the xenophage gets confused and can't really identify Eddie Brock as Venom, and that becomes also a very stupid thing of this film, because the codex that Eddie Brock has inside of him, because they explain this whole thing, that Venom is to go on and tell Eddie that the reason why Null is after him is because of this whole codex thing that they have, this kind of weird beacon or marker that if Eddie and Venom are to die, then the codex gets released, and that unleashes Null onto the world as we know it. But then again, it has to take us realizing that it's like, okay, why don't all of the other symbiotes have this? Why is it that it only seems to be that Venom has this? And what makes all of the other symbiotes like not just worthless to us in this film because they don't have the same thing? But so, we go on, and so Eddie is to go on and attach himself to a plane via the Venom symbiote to kind of just stick himself onto this plane, because we also had Eddie try and obtain a horse afterwards, but eventually that kind of goes horribly also. So Eddie goes on and he tries to take this plane, and it's kind of a very comedic thing, because we consistently have Eddie who is losing his shoes in this film, and it kind of becomes the running joke of this entire movie. So Eddie goes on, he's attached to this plane, and the xenomorph is to go on and find Eddie, and then that forces Venom to realize that he can't go on and be Venom as much as he wants to in this film. And so Venom goes on and fights the phage on the plane, but then they kind of knock one another off, and then that leads to have Eddie go on and find that there is a horse here, and then that also just kind of leads to, again, Eddie facing off against his xenophage. So we go on after Eddie is to go on and consistently face off against this xenophage, and that ends up tying in Strickland and the military guys to the point of now Eddie going on and needing the xenophage to face off against the Strickland guys so they can kind of both take one another out, to where Eddie now has to go on and finally just find a way to just get the heck out of there so he can go on and find this family that is to be the Martin and Nova and the kids. And a lot of people were bizarrely thinking that Nova, the woman, has some baby child, and that's to be like some Peter Parker of this world. Not the case. Some people were getting some stupid or clickbaiting misinformation, which this family had no baby. This family had a very young boy that was very afraid of aliens and didn't really want to see aliens. And Eddie Brock goes out of his way to be like, "Hey man, like aliens aren't really real. Uh, like if anything, you're gonna be fine. Like everyone's gonna protect you. It's all chicken babies are good." And to then go on and later have Eddie Brock need to turn around and tell this kid, well, yeah, I did lie to you, and here is this alien, but he's a friendly alien, so he's gonna be really nice to you and be like, hey man, I'm gonna save your life, buddy. Like, let's go on and let's do this. Um, which was a really nice moment. There's some nice moments in this movie, but then again, like you have to negate that there's a lot of wasting of time going on here because as soon as Eddie goes and is with this family, we all of a sudden have this car ride where they're all of a sudden doing this spending the time of singing this whole entire song of Major Tom, and I'm like, well, yeah, if you go on and you like look at like the very first Christmas Vacation movie where they're singing in the car and this and that, like, and you're criticizing this movie for doing the same, like I can see where a lot of people are like, well, like how does it work there but not here? But I'm also stating that like Christmas Vacation is a comedy film and this is supposedly an action movie. An action movie, like, I hate where an action film or a superhero thing has singing and dancing in it, and this movie has both. Uh, and also, like, everybody criticizes Spider-Man 3 for dancing and whatever, but this movie does the same freaking thing. And there's no problem seemingly with this movie doing it and that movie not, or that movie um so there's no criticism that this movie does it, but there's a lot of criticism that Spider-Man 3 does it. It's the same freaking thing. If anything, we're starting to even more realize that Spider-Man 3 is a freaking great film. It's way better than this freaking movie. And I don't know how many times I have to say freaking to just tell you how upset I was. So we go on to have Eddie that is to be with this family in this car that just translates us to get to Las Vegas, where Eddie goes on and wipes out all of his money because we've seen this in the trailer, where Venom's like, "Oh my god, I gotta just shove all this money in here, just jank this thing, and like I'll just get all the money." And Eddie's like, "Oh my god, you broke my foot," and "Oh my god, you spent all our money," and that just leads to all of a sudden both Eddie and Venom, after losing all their money, to realize that there is somebody else that is winning their money really well, and that ends up being, coincidentally enough, Mrs. Chen. Which goes on to then lead Eddie Brock to meet up with Mrs. Chen, and they hug it out and like, "Oh my god!" And Mrs. Chen is like, "Oh my god, is Venom here?" And it's like, "Well, yeah, of course." So that all of a sudden leads, I guess, Miss Chen is just like a billionaire now for some goofy reason, and she ends up going on to be in this huge lavish penthouse, and this leads to this huge massive dance number that deservingly doesn't need to be in this film whatsoever, but exists and is and whatever. And we have Eddie. Or Tom Hardy, who's consistently saying like, "Oh my God, when did you guys practice this?" Blah 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 blah, and I am just like, God, this is the stupidest thing in this movie. If we have Tom Hardy again saying like, why do these things need to be in this film? There's a whole line where he's like seriously, we're actually singing in this movie. Like there, number two part where we can just go on like, why are we even having this in this film? So we push on after this stupid dancing number to then go on and realize that Venom is being Venom for far too long, which all of a sudden leads the Xenophage to clock in on Venom, but then eventually Venom turns back into Eddie, and so it's just Mrs. Chen and Eddie Brock there, and so now the Xenophage is just like, where is Venom? And so that comes to have Strickland go on and find out where the Xenophage is, and it's again like, okay, like Strickland is just a little bit just slow on the get go here. So that goes on and is to lead uh forcibly Eddie Brock to go on and anyway. So I think here's where we finally have like Strickland meet with Eddie, and they tase him, they take him down, and they finally bring him in to Area 55, and the xenophage comes in, and yeah, so we have Eddie who awakens in Area 55, and he doesn't have the symbiote on him because they separate it from him. And they start to look at the symbiote and they start to realize that like this symbiote really needs to latch onto a host or it dies. And they're like, oh well, okay, we're just kind of looking at this symbiote, I guess, die. And as Eddie Brock awakens, he realizes that he's right next to who he thinks is Detective Mulligan, which is actually just Toxin. So Toxin is going on and talking to Eddie here and explaining kind of what's going on and this and that. If Eddie isn't really and truly aware, so here is where we start to get Sadie Christmas, the girl that eventually becomes Lasher, kind of comes into play here. So Sadie Christmas is to go on and consistently be looking at these symbiotes, and she's like, symbiotes, yeah. Like, I really want this power. Like, of course, like, power corrupts people, but, like, also, like, they've been looking at these symbiotes for so long, and, like, it seems that a lot of them aren't a real, true threat, and if anything, there seems to be a much more pressing matter that eventually is seemingly coming, but we're never going to really see what it is. So we have Eddie Brock, and he ends up going on after talking to Toxin to then simply be hauled out of the place of which that he was to have been taken, and I think he was going to get interrogated or something. And Strickland throughout this entire process is getting more and more irritated of Dr. Payne and what she's actually doing, to the point of him going on and wanting to uh, and having a way for Strickland to figure out a way to like just kind of talk a rank above her to try to like stop everything that she's doing, and having Strickland do what he wants, which is to probably just kill off all these symbiotes and also just kind of take control of this whole procedural thing. So Strickland goes on and he takes full command, and so he stops Eddie dead in his tracks and is to go on and tell Dr. Payne that like she's no longer attached to this whole experiment anymore, this and that, and Strickland is to want to go on and put a gun to Eddie Brock and murder him here. But the whole thing is, we come to find that Sadie was to go on and find one of the symbiotes and be so tempted to take the power of it that she ends up going on and briefly becoming Venom, but then Venom gets switched back to Brock, and now Sadie is not a symbioted person. And so Eddie goes on and he fights off against the military. Eddie goes on to try and tell Dr. Payne and everybody to unleash all the symbiotes because logically, the xenophage is to also make its way to Area 55. And Toxin is to try to go on and face off against the xenophage, but he ends up getting quickly taken by the xenophage and eaten and killed. All while this is going on, we also have the Martin family that are making their way to Area 55 because they're like, "Hey man, we gotta see something. We gotta see what Area 51/55 is, and we gotta see some action." So because Martin is to be this diehard, like, I'm really into Alien guy, and like I want to go on and investigate this. And Eddie Brock had gone on to tell Martin, it's like, well, hey man, like whatever you find there, just kind of be safe. Like hey man, like you're probably gonna find your answers, but you're probably not gonna like what you're gonna find. So like hey man, just be safe. So again, we have Eddie Brock, and he's rushing through, going on and saying like, okay, hey, like unleash the symbiotes. We gotta rescue them all, because if anything, like we gotta have somebody that's gonna go on and face off against the xenophage. But then it ends up becoming a lot more xenophages, and I don't know the multiplier of that, but there's a lot of xenophages that get unleashed here as Null is becoming more and more like, okay, like you xenophages just aren't getting the job done, so we just got to send more out just to see if they can collect all the symbiotes. So they send all of the xenophages that they can possibly send, because Null is still just chained up on planet symbiote, and like he just can't get out, because heaven forbid we actually have a real full-on final boss thing by the end of this film, because Null, who cares about him, right? So he's just the biggest baddest guy in the Marvel comic books, but heaven forbid we actually see him full on in glory and battle and whatever in an actual Marvel live action film. So all the xenophages get released, but then also so on do all of the symbiotes. We have Sadie, who becomes Lasher, and she's doing most of the heavy lifting, and we just have a bunch of rando characters, uh, like extra like security guards and whatever, that all start to become all of the symbiotes. So here's where it starts to pick up if people were snoozing on this movie before. So this whole huge battle ends up coming off with all these symbiotes, but every single one of the symbiotes, for the most point, one by one, end up getting killed. To the point of all of a sudden now having even Dr. Payne need to become a symbiote so she can go on and save Sadie Christmas. So it kind of sets up that it seems that they might have some kind of weird relationship going on between the two of them. I don't know what that, like, there was some kind of weird, awkward, like, moment where they were just kind of staring at one another, like, you saved my life kind of thing. And I'm like, are they gonna get together? That'd be kind of cool. But then again, I'm like, Sadie doesn't have the symbiote anymore, so like it's not like they can like dynamic duo symbiote it up. It's sad, but it is. It's true. So so again, fight is to be having by all this day, and Strickland is trying to get on the fight, but eventually he gets stabbed in the chest, and by one of the phages, because he's fighting him off. And this eventually leads to Eddie Brock coming to the conclusion, like, well, hey, uh, hey, I'm gonna try and get to the fight too, by kind of using the symbiote power to kind of get these helicopter blades and slice one of the xenophages. I'm going to slice one of the heads off, but what exactly does that accomplish? Because as soon as you just slice one of the heads off, like it's going to come right back and just continue to be a thing. So weirdly, like they come to the conclusion as Venom is to be with Eddie, and they're seeing all of the xenophages start to closer and closer come to the helicopter, and Venom's like, "I'll be with you to the end," and this and all this jazz and all this business going on, and them having this like one last hurrah hurrah between one another, like remembering about how like they met and this and that and all reminiscing and all this jazz. So Venom realizes that he has to go on and do the sacrifice play. So Venom goes on and he consumes every single one of the xenophages as they're trying to get out of him. And so Venom tries to take out Eddie Brock, his host, and chucks him out of the body, as Venom is to continue to drag himself to this location where the symbiote can get nullified by seemingly this acid-like spray, to where Strickland has to go on and drag his body to get clearance and whatever, use his eyeballish things to get a password code for the Xenomorphs and Venom to get killed all at the same time. So Eddie Brock is almost going on and looking at Venom, and I'm like, are they gonna do the like Spider-Man like 3 thing, where once Eddie uh and Venom separate, that the Topher Grace Eddie like jumps back into the symbiote right as it explodes, and that's how they die? Man, that would be a pretty cool way to end it. But no, Eddie Brock just kind of watches on, and like the symbiote every once in a while like shoves like this door onto Eddie, and so Eddie, with this like window of him being able to see what's going on, is seeing Venom in this acid just kill off all the xenomorphs, as well as also Venom dying. So that goes on, and that is to be the swan song of this movie. Not the fact that Venom takes on Null and he dies. No, like we have to go on and have like all the xenomorphs just die. But that in tow, we have to realize that since now Venom is now dead, the Codex ends up getting sent back to Null, and Null is now unleashed. He's free. He's gonna go on and be the threat that no one's gonna care about because no one's probably gonna see this movie. And the end credit scene is to go on and deliver the fact that he's gonna be coming. Oh, I'm coming for you. Oh yeah, you better like just wake up like uh early in the day because I might be coming. Who knows? You better be shaking in your boots every time that you're alive because I might be coming. Yeah, I'm sure I'm gonna be so uh just freaking mark your calendars when Noah's gonna come, because once he does, no one's gonna care because no one probably saw this movie, and whatever entanglement that he will have in a Spider-Man film really will not go on and have me need to rewatch this movie ever again. Just be like, oh man, I need to rewatch this film just so that way I can understand what is going on in future Spider-Man Marvel thing, of which whatever Eddie Brock is going to be tied to, or Venom is going to be tied to, because how exactly is that all going to be written in the later films? If anything, also, like, if Spider-Man does go on and become Venom within the Tom Holland movies, that would much more so understand how Venom Spider-Man could go on and face off against guys like Doctor Doom and all these kind of heavy hitters of the Marvel universe. And because logically, I can't go on and see like a possible future uh, Secret War, whatever film, without there being a black suited Spider-Man at some point. But it's whatever at this point. Like these movies aren't as big and as viable and as important as they used to be, and it kind of showcases within another installment of this kind of Marvel film here. So with that said, I feel like I'm going to go on and skip through the toe here, um, because either way, like what really all happens kind of after the whole aftermath of Venom and the sacrifice he is to go on and make. We have Strickland who's telling Eddie Brock, it's like, well, hey, all of your crimes are all expunged, and like you can just go about your day, like it's all right, like, and really like Eddie Brock was to go on and talk to Venom about making their way to the Statue of Liberty, and how having the Statue of Liberty kind of welcome uh, anybody who is to come from a foreign or uh, a different place other than, of course, America, to make their way, of course, to America. And Eddie and Venom's kind of promise was to make it there, to get to the Statue of Liberty. And when Venom, of course, was to die, and Venom was to tell Brock, it's like, well, hey, don't forget about me. And Tom Hardy makes his way to the Statue of Liberty. It's like, well, yeah, I'm not going to forget you, buddy. Like, this is how I'm going to remember you. Every time I look at the statues, I'm going to remember like the sacrifice that you made. Even though it'll be a pointless sacrifice because we'll probably see some iteration or retcon or something of it later. It won't matter. Uh, sadly enough. So that's how everything just kind of breaks down. I don't think there's anything much else that in my brain felt important to state or create uh, within my telling. So with that said, I think I'm going to get the heck out of here, as well as also realizing that this movie was an hour and a half, and I've already talked for an hour. Which rationally a lot of people are like, man, that video is too long. Uh, videos are way too long, anyways. If the movie um, was 12 hours and I spoke for uh, 30 minutes, the video would still be too long. Um, but again, at least I did a video. At least I did a video. We're coming to that point now. Because there was a lot of times for me where I was just like, should I do this anymore? Like, should I really be doing this? Like, am I really like making like any real true uh I don't know, like any real true like importance anymore. I don't know. But either way, I'm here. So if you want to comment below, talk about other stuff that I probably should have more reviewed because I'm sure there was probably a billion other things that I could have reviewed. Um, there was a lot of stuff that I'm sure people like. Why didn't you review Penguin or why didn't you? Because they were freaking boring. I've I've seen bits and pieces of Penguin. I've seen bits and pieces of a lot of the newer stuff, and I'm just like, this is boring as f. For the life of me, I cannot go on and want to dissect any of this stuff because I'm just like, I don't think there's any way I can be positive about any of it, or I can just be like, man, I've lost a good chunk of a lot of those movies or shows out of my brain because nothing was really going on. And hence why I don't really do good reviews for a lot of things because a lot of it's something I definitely don't want to remember. I don't want to remember how the Marvels played out because I want to completely erase off my brain that movie even existed. Uh, there's a lot of kind of new release stuff that I did kind of see a little bit, like Teacup, and I'm like, Teacup is the goofiest show that makes no sense, and I feel like all I could do about Teacup is just say how goofy it is, and not be able to really do anything more than just say how goofy it is and just talk about how the episodes were. Like, that's about as bare bones as I can figure out how to map out a review of that. So I don't really feel like I'm good at this anymore. So that's where I'm at. So with that said, not being good at this, not figuring out a good way to shut my mouth, I'm just gonna get out of here. Bye everybody. Bye everybody. The next videos, I don't know when are coming. Logically, in my brain, there are projects that I thought about doing. Like I thought about playing Skyrim and just kind of plopping it on the channel. I've thought about just going on and just kind of finding random movies and just kind of talking about them and not having like a certain pattern or whatever. I'm just kind of doing whatever. I really wanted to go on and review Hellboy: The Crooked Man, so that might be eventually a movie I talk about on here, even though I'm sure that isn't the crispiest, crackliest, newest, freshest movie now at this point. But it's probably the only movie that I think that can get views. But other than that, I think that there might be some fun content stuff that I might eventually want to talk about. I honestly wish also that I can just re-review stuff as well. Just be able to just rewatch movies and just being like, yeah, like I'm gonna say the exact same thing that I said in the other review, but here's where I am now. Um, I think also a lot of people do go on and do that as well. Like I've seen several YouTube channels that just go over the exact same movies numerous times over, and maybe that could be a thing that I could still uh, attempt, try, whatever, because it seems that there's only a certain number of very popular uh, movies and shows. Also, I know that there is also a lot of YouTubers that go on and they do not only reviews, but then they also do like commentaries and reaction stuff and all these other things. And reaction stuff, I don't want to go and try to start out a channel that's not even that isn't even monetized yet, and risk content ID. I don't want to go on and risk like even like visuals like this could even be a risk, and sometimes people probably don't understand that. And I can go on and give pure examples of how that has been a mistake. But yeah, I'm taking too long to talk about stuff no one cares about. Uh, but hey, I'm talking about it anyways because I don't care. I just don't. Um, if anything, um, there were reviews I had a lot of fun doing, and then there's also things that I phoned in um, on this channel, and I hated that I phoned them in. Uh, there was a lot of stuff that I had to just in my brain just figure out how I can have fun with stuff. When really I was just like, this like really isn't for me at all. Like I am just really just going on and just doing whatever, hoping for one view, and that's really what I'm doing at this point. I don't think I'm ever again gonna go on and do as well as what I did in some of the videos that I did in the popular section of the channel. So that is more me consistently just continuing to look back and just being like, man, like I did something good one day, but that day is not today. Uh, Maybe I'll be shocked and surprised, and this will do surprisingly well because no one talked about it. After a number of days of this coming out, no one talked about it. Yeah, right. Um, but anyways, I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.